The Ivory Calculus, applying the 71 method to systematic extinction logistics. Section 1. The hook and the high stakes. Audit. Is it possible to map the exact moment a planet's life support becomes a logistical impossibility? Through the lens of the Ivory Calculus, we are auditing the intersection of high-level mathematics and total biological failure. This is not a warning, it is a clinical breakdown of the algorithms driving our systematic extinction. We map the cold interception of biological collapse and mathematical inevitability by stress testing the 71 method against the logistical blueprints of massive extinction. We audit the algorithmic precision required to dismantle a biosphere, stripping away ecological sentiment to expose the forensic reality, stripping away ecological sentiment to expose the forensic reality of a planet being systematically calculated out of existence. When we look at global systems, we often mistake structural failure for chaotic accidents, but the data tells a completely different story. It reveals a highly organized, sequential teardown of the global infrastructure. Section 2, Biodome Extraction Mechanics and the May 2026 live data. Examine the live data streams from May 2026 showing the precision point removal of keystone species across 3 major biomes. In any large-scale logistical teardown, you do not attack the entire infrastructure simultaneously because that requires an inefficient expenditure of energy. Instead, the alarm targets the critical dependencies. So by isolating and removing specific keystone species within these 3 distinct biomes, the system triggers a cascading failure throughout the subordinate food web and climate stabilization networks. You see, the data streams from this month show that the population drops are not localized anomalies. Again, the population drops are not localized anomalies. They are synchronized across different latitudes. This indicates that the extraction process is opening on a global timeline, systematically pulling out the structural pillars of the biosphere until the weight of the remaining ecosystem can no longer be sustained by the surrounding environment. Section 3, the Ivory Calculus formula and biological insolvency. So break down the Ivory Calculus formula used to determine the exact moment a biosphere transitions from stable to insolvent. Every living ecosystem functions as a closed resource ledger that requires a strict balance of inputs and outputs to remain operational. Again, please let me re-say that. Every living ecosystem functions as a closed resource ledger that in turn requires a strict balance of inputs and outputs to remain operational. The Ivory Calculus treats biological diversity not as a permanent fixture, but as an active asset account that suffers continuous depreciation under the 71 method. You see, this formula calculates the exact velocity at which a habitat loses its regenerative capacity. Relative to the speed of external resource extraction, when the consumption vectors outspace the natural replenishment cycles past a specific mathematical threshold, the entire ecosystem transitions into absolute structural insolvency. Once this point on the ledger is crossed, the process becomes irreversible. You see, the remaining biological components enter a forced liquidation phase where collapse is no longer a probability, but a mathematical certainty. Section 4. The resource balance sheets and global logistics. Review the cold transparency of the balance sheets where biological diversity is traded for immediate computational and energetic gains. In the final stage of this forensic audit, we must look at where the extracted value is being transferred. The living infrastructure of the planet is actively being converted into raw capital to fuel high frequency, resource intensive global systems. Forests, oceans, and foundational biomes are stripped of their ecological identity and reclassified as depreciation or depreciating collateral on a global transnational ledger. The long-term survival parameters of biosphere are systematically weighted against the immediate, unyielding, energetic demands of modern computational networks and its logistical supply chains. You see, when we audit the numbers, it clearly becomes a biological life, which is simply the resource being spent to sustain, being spent to sustain the machine. Audit complete.